Welcome to my presentation on the ethics of brain-computer interfaces, also known as BCIs. In this presentation, I'll explore how BCIs have evolved over time, from early experiments to today's clinical as well as consumer applications. I will be closing with where BCIs may be headed in the future, and throughout this, I'll trace on major ethical themes. Let's start by setting down some groundwork. So, what is a BCI? A BCI is a system that enables direct communication between the brain and an external device. It decodes brain signals and translates them into digital commands. This allows people to control software or hardware, like a computer cruiser or robotic limb, purely through their thought. And BCIs have a very interesting collaboration between neuroscience and technology, and where algorithms learn to interpret neural activity and interface it with machines. Throughout this presentation, I will explore three major ethical themes that have emerged and evolved with the development of BCIs, which are unintended psychological consequences, autonomous choice, and the impact on identity and personhood. I will start from early fears of mind control in the 1960s to today's concerns about AI integration and enhancement, and these themes have taken on new dimensions as BCI technologies have advanced but also evolved. By tracing their trajectory across the past, present, and future, will also allow us to gain a deeper understanding about how these ethical challenges continue to evolve over time, but actually shape the future of BCIs. The historical context will be starting in the mid-1900s. In the 1960s, José Delgado, a Spanish neuroscientist and professor at Yale, conducted some of the most controversial experiments in brain science at the time. He implanted electrodes into the brains of animals and also eventually into humans to study how electrical stimulation could influence behavior. In 1993, Delgado took his research into the bullfighting ring in Spain, and with just a remote control in hand, an electrode implanted into the bull's brain, he activated the system such that when the bull charged, he was actually able to make the bull stop as it was running towards him. And Delgado called this system a stimoceiver. And it works by transmitting electrical signals deep into the brain to control movement, mood, and in this bull, he controlled aggression. And what he envisioned with this was a future where he could create a psycho-civilized society where mental illness, violence, and other undesirable behaviors might be eliminated through this stimulation. The amygdala, a core limbic structure, plays a central role in modulating fear, aggression, and emotional salience, and it's where the implementation of electrodes was actually done. And by delivering the targeted electrical currents into this region, you excite neuronal populations responsible for threat perception and behavior, leading to immediate involuntary emotional responses such as rage, fear, or passivity. And these responses are actually bypassed by the person's conscious control. This stimulation then propagates through established amygdala projections to the hypothalamus, brainstem, and prefrontal cortex. This then triggers coordinated physiological responses such as heart rate changes, pupil dilation, facial expressions, and even shifts in internal hormone states. And the amygdala's role in emotional memory encoding also implicates onto the hippocampus, and that makes these experiments and experiences actually remembered as real feelings rather than ones of artificial origin. These experiments were an early biological challenge to identity, with an emotional reality being altered by external stimulation. And this is where the question arises of where does authentic self reside? And if behavioral responses can be shaped without conscious input, the idea of autonomous choice is now put into the question. In 1957, the first cochlear implant was developed by André de Journo, a French physicist, and Charles Irius, an otologist, to restore hearing through electrical stimulation on the auditory nerve. And this marked a major step in neuroprosthetics. And by the 1990s, deep brain stimulation has emerged as a treatment for Parkinson's disease. And the issue with deep brain stimulation is it can actually affect a person's personality, though the effects vary by individual, and they're often subtle, but are very complex and context-dependent. DBS involves implanting electrodes into a specific region of the brain, like the subthalamic nucleus or globus pallidus interna, to treat motor disorders such as Parkinson's disease. And this high-frequency stimulation modulates abnormal neural activity, reducing symptoms like tremor and rigidity. However, those same regions are very closely connected to the limbic system and the prefrontal cortex, which are involved in emotional regulation, impulse control, decision-making, and a lot of things that we associate with social behavior. And as seen with Jose's experiments, because of these interconnected networks, DBS can sometimes lead to changes in personality traits, mood, and cognitive function. Some patients experience increased energy, impulsivity, irritability, or euphoria after DBS, especially if this stimulation is affecting limbic circuits. And this can also lead to behaviors like compulsive shopping, gambling, and others can even report a sense of emotional flatness, loss of motivation. And I was able to find a study that was titled, "I Miss Being Me. Phenomenological Effects of Deep Brain Stimulation," described patients who said they had recognized the motor improvement, but felt alienated from their emotional self. In severe cases, this has led to depression or even them deactivating their device. Although DBS is primarily targeting motor symptoms, some individuals end up showing subtle changes in executive function. And this goes into planning, judgment, and inhibition, which are all very closely tied to personality expression. A major breakthrough in invasive BCI technology came in 1998 when neuroscientist Philip Kennedy successfully implanted the first long-term intracortical electrode, which is now known as the neurotrophic electrode, into the motor cortex of a locked-in patient. This device encouraged neural tissue to actually grow into the electrode itself, improving signal stability over time, and pretty much the tissue was just insulating the wire and allowing the patient to modulate brain signals to control a computer cruiser. And through communication, it was extremely limited, but it was one of the first demonstrations of direct mind-to-machine translation in a human. And Kennedy's approach set the stage for future BCIs, which were designed for communication in patients with severe motor impairments. And now, building on this foundation, in 2004, the BrainGate trial led by John Donohue and his team at Brown University represented another leap, and researchers were able to implant a 26-channel Utah microelectrode array into the motor cortex of a quadriplegic patient. With only his thoughts, he was able to move and control a computer cruiser, open and close a robotic hand, and operate basic assistive software. Welcome to the present. I want to start exploring present-day application in medicine as well as beyond medicine. The most heard about BCI today is Neuralink, which is founded by Elon Musk, and it aims to develop high-bandwidth, minimally invasive BCIs, capable of reading and writing neural data with great precision. On the biological level, the company's flagship device is designed to be implanted using a robotic surgical system that uses ultrafine electrodes and places it into the cortex, with very thin interfaces so that they cause minimal scarring, thereby preserving the integrity of neural tissue over time. These electrodes target specific regions of the brain, such as the motor or somatosensory cortex, to capture complex neural activity patterns. This approach marks a significant evolution from earlier nanotechnologies that we spoke about, such as DBS, which, while clinically transformative, it was in treating Parkinson's and essential tremor. It often relied on a less targeted stimulation of broader brain regions, and the side effect of DBS often stem from the imprecision of stimulation, which can inadvertently modulate neural circuits beyond the intended target. In contrast, Neuralink's high-resolution cortical interfaces are designed to engage specific neural populations with far greater spatial precision, reducing the risk of off-target effects. By focusing stimulation and decoding efforts at the cortical level, where motor intention, sensory processing, and cognitive planning actually occur, this technology may avoid some of the deeper brain connections that have been associated with DBS. Neuralink also uses closed-loop capabilities in BCIs, which are systems that monitor brain activity in real time and automatically adjust stimulation or output based on that feedback. Unlike open-loop systems, which is what we saw in the historical use of BCIs, which deliver a constant or preset signals, closed-loop BCIs respond dynamically to the brain's current state, making them more precise, adaptive, and personalized for things such as motor-controlled or psychiatric treatment. Furthermore, the closed-loop capabilities envisioned in Neuralink systems promise to tailor the stimulation based on real-time feedback from the brain itself, potentially minimizing overstimulation and promoting stable long-term outcomes. If successful, such systems could offer a new standard for neuroethical safety, enhancing function while preserving personality, and restoring communication or mobility without compromising the psychological integrity of the individual by using their closed-loop systems in conjunction with the use of precise placement that Neuralink has pushed for. The Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA, has been a leader in developing next-generation BCI systems, and it stands out from the others through using AI in enhancing these BCI initiatives. These projects aim to create non-invasive or minimally invasive interfaces such as Neuralink that can both read from and write to the brain. A key innovation is the use of machine learning algorithms that adapt in real time to the user's brain activity, enabling faster, more accurate decoding of neural signals. Machine learning is a branch of artificial intelligence where computers actually just take patterns from data without being explicitly programmed from every task. And instead of giving the system step-by-step instructions, you feed it examples, and it learns how to make predictions or decisions based on that data. In the context of BCIs, machine learning algorithms analyze the brain signals and learn to recognize patterns that correspond to specific thoughts, movements, intentions, and over time they get better and faster at decoding these signals, even as the brain activity changes. And this just made me think, while machine learning enables BCIs to adapt in real time to a user's neural signals, it made me concerned since identity and personhood evolve over time. And a key feature of humanity is that we grow, mature, and change, not just biologically, but emotionally, psychologically, and socially. Our preferences shift, our values evolve, and even the way we think can transform based on experiences, relationships, and the learning that we do. However, machine learning systems optimize for performance based on the historical data that it is given. how a person's brain functioned or responded in the past. If not designed with flexibility in mind, this could lead to a situation where BCI's understanding of the user becomes outdated or limited, reinforcing old patterns or assumptions about the user's identity. A hypothetical and maybe an extreme I would like to give to illustrate this thought is, imagine that a baby is born with a neurological condition that prevents them from moving or speaking, and the baby is given a cutting-edge BCI implanted early in life to help them communicate. And this system is using machine learning to interpret the baby's early brain signals and gradually learns how they express basic needs like hunger, discomfort, or attention based on the infant's brain activity at that time. Now let's fast forward 20 years and that baby is now an adult with new emotions, complex thoughts, and most likely an entirely different way of processing the world. And they've developed preferences, a sense of humor, political opinions, goals, even romantic feelings. But if the BCI's machine learning system hasn't evolved in parallel, if it's still trained primarily on how that person's brain worked when they were an infant or child, it may struggle to accurately decode their thoughts now. The system might continue to prioritize simplified or outdated communication patterns, filtering out more complex or mature expressions just because it doesn't recognize them now. And now this 20-year-old is stuck acting like a baby. This could result in frustration, miscommunication, and it is a deep ethical concern. The person has grown, but the system model might not have grown with them. And this issue also invites us to rethink the concept of autonomy itself. Traditionally, autonomy is understood as the ability to make one's decisions. And when it comes to BCIs, especially those trained on machine learning models, autonomy must also include the freedom to evolve as a person. If a neural interface interprets a response only to who the person was, a version of themselves captured at a specific earlier point of time, it then risks the ability of them becoming someone new. And this brings up a critical question of, is a person truly autonomous if their growth, emotional development, or personality changes are not recognized or allowed by the system that is actually meant to enable them? And in this sense, autonomy should not just be about making choices in the present moment, but also having this space to change over time, to be able to form your new values, shift priorities, and explore different identities. And a person who is trapped in a static, machine-learned model of themselves may appear to be in control, but in reality, they're only being heard through the lens of who they used to be. This means that BCIs challenge us to expand autonomy beyond just decision-making, and it becomes more about preserving the fluidity of the self. Any ethical neurotechnology must also recognize that people are not data points frozen in time, but dynamic and changing beings. Neuroplasticity refers to the brain's capacity to reorganize itself both structurally and functionally in response to internal or external stimuli. And this process occurs throughout the lifespan, but is especially pronounced during critical development periods, following something like an injury, and during learning. And in childhood and adolescence, the brain rapidly forms and prunes synaptic connections. This shapes cognition and behavior. In adulthood, neuroplasticity continues during skill acquisition, memory formation, and even emotional processing. Factors like sleep, stress, hormones, and environmental enrichment constantly influence the remodeling at a molecular level by modulating synaptic strength, dendritic spine growth, gene expression. If a BCI doesn't evolve with the user's shifting neural patterns due to growth, stress, learning, or biological cycles, it may lose accuracy and actually start misinterpreting signals. For BCIs to remain effective and ethically sound over time, they must not only decode neural activity, but also account for living, adapting systems that they're actually interacting with. Now, looking at the arc of ethical concern regarding BCI development, we saw early that Delgado's remote control bull raised personality challenges. Neuralink's high-precision cortical implants and other AI integrations make us worried about autonomy being expanded. And it's clear that our ethical concerns have matured alongside the technology. When the early fears centered on crude forms of mind control and the loss of conscious agency, but today the conversation has deepened. With AI-driven systems and machine learning-based BCIs, the concern is no longer just about control being taken, but also being misrepresented by a system that fails to evolve with us. As BCIs become more precise and embedded into the fabric of who we are, the threat isn't domination, but it's more distortion. And this reflects a growing ethical sensitivity to autonomy, identity, and the complex neuroplastic nature of being human. Today, public perception of BCIs is shaped by a blend of anticipation, trust, but also some apprehension. A recent study analyzing public perception of BCIs by using insights from a decade of data on X revealed that while there's significant interest in BCI advancements, particularly in the medical applications, there are still concerns about data privacy, safety, and ethical implications that remain very prominent. In the United States, a research survey found that 56% of adults view the idea of a brain chip implants for enhanced information processing as, quote, a bad idea for society, but only 13% actually considered it beneficial. And in China, it was seen that factors such as health, socioeconomic status, and learning ability were shown to positively influence BCI acceptance, whereas when we saw that age went up, there was actually an inverse relationship. And a study in the UK highlighted limited public familiarity with BCIs. Most participants were expressing ethical concerns related to privacy, safety, and potential social inequalities. Despite this, there was a strong interest in BCIs for medical purposes, like rehabilitation for stroke or paralysis. So, where are BCIs heading? The market is absolutely exploding. In 2023, the global BCI industry was valued at around $2.1 billion, and it's actually expected to more than double to $4.5 billion by 2029. That's a growth rate of over 14% per year. Companies like Neuralink and BlackRock Neurotech are developing high-density wireless implants, and government agencies like DARPA are funding tech that could boost memory, modulate mood, or even enhance attention in soldiers. And we're seeing this shift from proof of concept devices in the lab to scalable platforms that are entering clinical trials and in some cases actually the consumer space. While machine learning laid the groundwork for decoding brain activity, what's truly pushing BCI technology forward is the broader set of artificial intelligence tools, and this includes deep learning, adaptive algorithms, and even natural language AI. For example, deep learning modules are now being applied to complex neural recordings like the ECOG, which can be seen here, which is an electrocorticography where electrodes are placed onto the surface of the brain. Deep learning models are also being used to look at multi-unit arrays, which are implanted electrodes that record signals from individual or small groups of neurons. And these high-resolution data sources provide very rich information, but are also pretty complex, and AI is actually able to make sense of them. And this deep learning helps decode these signals into specific mental states, such as movement planning, imagined speech, with a lot of accuracy. And it's done in controlled environments right now, and research is hopeful to be able to actually integrate this further. Some systems are now combining natural language processing, translating neural signals into full structured sentences. For example, a recent BCI allowed a paralyzed person to speak by simply thinking of words, which the system reconstructed by using AI-driven speech prediction models. And this raises exciting possibilities, but also subtle questions. If the system predicts and completes the sentence for you, how do you know that message is actually truly that person's? Imagine a BCI user trying to say, "I'm feeling better," but then the AI completes it and says, "I'm feeling ready to finish the treatment. I'm feeling better, but I'm ready to finish the treatment." And that difference might seem small, but in a clinical setting, that shift of language could lead to a different outcome. And I think many of us can relate to the idea of asking AI to do something, and it did something by misinterpreting what you asked, and imagine that being what's making the decisions in your life, and how concerning that might be for you. So closing off here, I'd like to touch on some of the future concepts that are in development in BCIs. And these are brain-cloud interfaces, AI-assisted cognition, and memory augmentation. A brain-cloud interface is the idea of directly connecting the human brain to a cloud computing system. And instead of just controlling a computer cruiser or a robotic arm, a brain-cloud interface is being able to access remote data, knowledge banks, or even an AI processing power. And these theoretical models suggest that we could one day upload new skills, even download languages, the way that we install apps on our phones. And this would require nanoscale neural devices, often referred to as neural nanorobotics. And these can transmit neural information wirelessly, pretty much like a Bluetooth device to and from a cloud system. While it's still conceptual, early work in high bandwidth BCIs and brain to AI pipelines is already happening. Next, I want to touch on AI assisted cognition, which is like a cognitive partner. And the AI monitors your brain activity through the BCI, which detects when you're overloaded, distracted, maybe feeling some fatigue, and it provides suggestions to help you stay focused, even decisions, or ways to solve your problem more effectively. And these systems could help with real-time decision-making and pattern recognition, help you multitask, or even help you manage stress and focus. AI wouldn't replace the cognition, but it's there to augment it. And it's been implemented as a thought for complex environments such as surgical rooms, air traffic control, military operations, and AI BCI hybrids could offer a live support based on neural feedback, optimizing cognitive load, or anticipating errors before they even occur. Lastly, memory augmentation refers to technology that enhances your brain's ability to store, retrieve, and even modify memories. Right now, researchers are using BCIs to study how stimulation of the hippocampus, which is the memory center of the brain, can improve recall in patients with memory loss. Looking ahead, this could extend to memory prosthetics, which are devices that help people with Alzheimer's or even tragic brain injuries retain information and allow healthy users to actually bookmark their memories for later. One major approach is called a neuroprosthetic memory system, first tested in humans by Theodore Berger and Robert Hampson. They used mathematical models of the hippocampal function to predict the neural patterns associated with successful memory and coding. And then they stimulated those same patterns when the brain wasn't producing them naturally. And the result improved memory in both animals and early phase human trials. The idea that a BCI could listen to the brain during a memory task, learn the specific firing patterns associated with successful recall, and then replay or reinforce those patterns using targeted stimulation. Over time, this might not only help restore memory in patients with injuries or dementia, but enhance it in healthy individuals, essentially creating a memory prosthetic. In the future, the system might allow people to tag certain moments for reinforcement, like highlighting a text in the book, but for a lived experience. As we have seen, the development of BCIs has brought us from bold early experiments in behavioral control to today's sophisticated AI-powered systems and future models that restore communication, mobility, and even memory. And with each leap that we have, new ethical questions are emerging, not only about what BCIs can do, but also what they should do. And concerns about identity distortion and static models of self to evolving notions of autonomy. These technologies force us to reimagine the boundaries between the BCI and personhood. And as BCIs become more integrated into our lives, ethical design must prioritize not only the function, but the dynamic, evolving nature of the individuals that they are designed for. And the challenge ahead isn't just technical, but it is very deeply biological, psychological, anthropological, and needs a very interdisciplinary approach to create the best BCIs possible. Thank you so much for listening.